Welcome to our deep dive into South Africa and the Congo.
Oh, this is going to be good.
Yeah.
I love this book, An African-Adventure.
Yeah. It's wild
So much going on.
how much this book is more than just a travelogue. It really captures this moment in time when the world was scrambling for resources. And these regions were kind of at the heart of it all. We're going to be using excerpts from it to explore the politics and the resources and even just the personalities that shaped these regions.
Yeah. It's really, you see that theme of scrambling for resources. It kind of pops up again and again.
Oh, yeah. And it all starts, our adventure at least, starts in Cape Town. The author, he paints this really vivid picture of Table Mountain, but it's during the South African winter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's a total contrast to, springtime back here.
Right. I hadn't thought about that. It's winter there when it's summer here.
Yeah. So it's this, Can you imagine that? Like a winter wonderland in Africa? It's
Yeah.
kinda crazy.
Yeah, it kind of sets the stage for all these contrasts, I think, that we see throughout the book.
Right.
And not just in the landscape, but, the clash of cultures and the different ambitions
Yeah.
of everybody.
Speaking of those clashes, let's talk about those early Dutch settlers.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, these people were, tough, resilient.
for sure.
The book really emphasizes how their character, that sort of stubborn, never give up spirit, it really shaped South African history.
Absolutely. And that spirit, you really see it living on in the Boers,
Right.
who are like the direct descendants
Mhm.
of those early Dutch settlers.
Mhm.
I mean, you got to think, they carved out a life in this really harsh land, constantly facing danger.
Yeah.
It just forged this sense of like fierce independence.
Yeah. And the book shares this crazy story about Paul Kruger. He was a Boer leader,
Oh, yeah.
and it really kind of embodies that resilience. So picture this. He's out in the field, and he accidentally, almost severs his own thumb with an axe. What does he do? He grabs a pocket knife, calmly cuts off the mangled finger, bandages the wound, and just goes on with his day.
Oh, my God.
It's crazy.
That's wild.
Talk about grit.
Yeah, that grit, that's key to understanding like the whole Boer mentality. These weren't people who backed down from a challenge.
Right.
Especially when they felt like their way of life was threatened.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened when the British settlers, the Whitelanders, started arriving in droves.
Yeah. You can practically feel the tension building. The Boers, they treasured their isolation. They had worked so hard for their independence. And suddenly, these newcomers were seen as this huge threat to their culture, their very identity.
Yeah.
It's no wonder that resentment started to simmer.
Yeah, the resentment really, it kind of boiled over into these restrictive policies against the British in the Transvaal and the Orange Free State. These policies were designed to try and protect the Boer way of life. But it really just sowed the seeds of conflict, ultimately.
Yeah, and that conflict really exploded with the Jameson raid. That was that attempt to overthrow the Boer government really was this turning point, right? It wasn't just some political squabble. Mm-hmm. It was this clash of empires, a struggle for dominance,
Right.
In this region that was just ripe with resources.
Absolutely. I mean, the Jameson raid was kind of like it lit this fire.
Yeah.
And it became the Boer War, which was this brutal conflict. I mean, it shattered the dream of Boer independence.
Yeah.
And it left this scar on South Africa, this legacy of bitterness and division.
Yeah.
That echoed for generations.
And the book, it uses Herzog's two streams slogan to really illustrate that impact.
Yeah.
He argued that the Boers and the British, they were like two rivers, flowing in separate channels.
Right.
Never really merging. And you can really see how this sentiment fueled the rise of Afrikaner nationalism.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But, amidst all this tide of nationalism, there's this really fascinating counterpoint.
Right.
The book introduces us to General Smuts.
Oh, yeah.
He's this Boer general and a scholar.
Yeah.
And kind of surprisingly, an advocate for a more global perspective.
He's kind of a puzzle, isn't he? You have this staunch Boer leader who also argued that the war had basically dealt a fatal blow to nationalism.
Right.
He called it a dying force, this narrow, self-destructive ideology.
Yeah. Smuts, he believed in a future where individualism would be the dominant force,
Hmm.
not national identity.
Right.
And he really saw Britain and America as leading this new world order. And
Wow.
he even envisioned an international currency,
Wow.
which is, for the time, a pretty radical idea.
Yeah, that's what makes this whole deep dive so fascinating. We're not just like tracing events.
Right.
We're really wrestling with these big ideas that shaped like the whole world.
Totally. And speaking of big ideas and even bigger personalities, we can't skip over the legacy of Cecil Rhodes.
Right.
His famous quote, "It must be all red,"
Oh yeah.
scrawled across that map of Africa in crimson ink.
It's just, yeah.
It kind of sums up his whole ambition.
It's so symbolic.
Yeah.
He envisioned this British Empire, stretching across the entire continent. And the book describes his home, Groot Schuur, as almost like a monument to this grand vision.
Mm.
You have the map, right, with its bold red lines.
Right.
The unfurled flag that was meant for the Cairo to Cape Railway, the symbol of his ambition.
Wow.
And then amidst all this, you have acres of these vibrant flowers.
It's such a striking image.
Yeah.
It's like power and beauty all mixed together.
Right. Rhodes really believed in the transformative power of resources.
Mm-hmm.
And he saw South Africa as the keystone to this whole empire.
Makes sense. And his ambition, it led to the development of the whole diamond industry.
Right.
It transformed Kimberley from this barren landscape into this global center of wealth and intrigue.
It's amazing. And the story of how Rhodes consolidated his control over those diamonds, it's really like a lesson in strategy and cunning.
Oh, yeah.
The book tells the story about a confrontation between Rhodes and his rival, Barnardo. They were arguing over this pile of diamonds. And Barnardo, he's threatening to flood the market,
Yeah. Oh, wow.
drive prices down. And Rhodes, thinking on his feet, he says, if those diamonds fit in a bucket, I'll buy them all at your price.
What?
So it sounds like a gamble, right?
Yeah.
But Rhodes was no fool.
Yeah.
He had calculated exactly how many diamonds Barnardo had and had procured a bucket of just the right size.
Oh, my God.
And sure enough, the diamonds didn't quite fill it.
That's amazing.
So, whether it was luck or just pure cunning, that was a turning point. Rhodes had basically outmaneuvered his rival and solidified his dominance in the entire diamond trade.
It's the De Beers story in a nutshell.
Yeah. But Wright wasn't just interested in controlling the supply. He wanted to control the whole market.
Right.
So he forms this diamond syndicate in London. It was essentially a group of middlemen who managed the global distribution of all these diamonds from Kimberley.
Right.
It's talk about a globalized business model, right?
Yeah. And it shows how South African resources, they were shaping the whole world. These diamonds weren't just glittering stones.
Right.
They were economic and political leverage.
Yeah.
And Rhodes knew exactly how to use that power.
Oh, yeah. But as with any story of wealth and empire, there's always a shadow side. And An-African-Adventure doesn't shy away from that. It refers to it as the quote-unquote native question.
Right.
While the Boers and the British were battling it out, they both agreed on one thing. They needed to manage the indigenous population.
It wasn't just a political issue, though. It was a social and economic one as well.
Yeah.
The book really acknowledges that inherent tension that existed between the economic development of South Africa and the rights of the native people who live there.
Right. And that tension, it erupted in violence. The Bambara Rebellion against British rule is a stark example. And even during the author's visit, there was this student uprising at a Kimberley school.
Mm.
It was sparked by dissatisfaction with the quality of food, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
But, it shows how this undercurrent of unrest, it could surface at any moment.
Right.
And the simmering tension, you're going to see it echo in the Congo as well. Because, while diamonds were glittering in South Africa, there was a different story unfolding right in the heart of the dark continent.
The Congo, it held this totally different kind of allure. There was a sense of mystery, untapped potential. It drew in all kinds of adventurers and entrepreneurs. It was this land of dense jungles and mighty rivers and this almost mythical reputation.
Yeah. The author, he describes his arrival in the Congo, and he was expecting, the sweltering jungle heat.
Oh, yeah.
But he was met with a chill.
What?
On the Katanga Plateau.
I never would have thought of that.
Yeah. It really challenges those stereotypical images we have of the Congo, and reveals this diversity in its landscapes.
And that diversity, it extends to the people and to the forces that were shaping the Congo's destiny.
Right.
While the British were kind of consolidating their hold on South Africa, this new wave of influence was arriving in the Congo,
Right.
and it was led by an American, Thomas F. Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan was a financier with an ambition that rivaled Cecil Rhodes. I mean, he
Mhm.
saw the potential of the Congo, and he backed his vision with serious capital.
Yeah.
His involvement with the Fournier, that was a company with vast mining and agricultural concessions.
Right.
It was a turning point, a new era of American influence in the region.
And it wasn't just about like one man's ambition either. Ryan, he forged this really strategic partnership with Belgian financiers
Right.
and King Leopold II, who, he was a shrewd businessman in his own right.
Oh,
So this whole collaboration,
yeah.
it really highlights how complex the situation was, the interplay of, financial and political interests
Yeah.
driving development in the Congo.
To really understand the Congo, you kind of have to understand the Congo River, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And the book, it takes us on this journey aboard the Louis Cousin,
Okay.
which was a stern wheeler, kind of reminiscent of those iconic boats that plied the Mississippi,
Right.
and it paints this vivid picture of life on the river,
Yeah.
the challenges of navigating this vast waterway, and just the people who made this journey their own.
That's really interesting. This voyage, it was about more than just transportation. It was like this window into the soul of the Congo.
Yeah.
The author, he describes all the different passengers, Belgian officials, Catholic priests, even his own personal servant, Jerome. It's like this microcosm of the cultural exchange that was happening.
Right. And speaking of cultural exchange, the author, he doesn't shy away from describing some of the encounters with, cannibalistic traditions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which reminds us that there were these vast cultural differences, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes shocking realities of exploring a new world.
Absolutely. And, these encounters, as unsettling as they might be, they're crucial to understanding just how complex the Congo was.
Yeah.
It reminds us that our own perceptions are often shaped by our own cultural lens.
Right.
And to truly understand, you have to approach cultural differences with, sensitivity and an open mind.
Absolutely.
It's so important. It's important to remember that those traditions, they often clashed with European perspectives,
Right.
and it created a lot of misunderstanding and fear.
Yeah.
It's a reminder of how crucial it is to approach those cultural differences with sensitivity and open mind.
Yeah. And as we kind of journey deeper into the Congo, we meet this figure who really embodies a more enlightened approach to colonialism. Louis Franck, he was the Belgian minister of the colonies,
Okay.
and he championed this philosophy that became known as the Franck Doctrine.
The Franck Doctrine. Okay.
Yeah.
So what was that all about?
Well, Franck's approach, it was all about what he called building the native. It was about equipping the Congolese people to participate in their nation's progress. He really emphasized technical education and respect for their traditions.
Oh, interesting.
So instead of forcing, European language and culture, he believed in empowering the Congolese people to develop their own skills.
Okay.
And their own resources.
So it was a more progressive approach.
Yeah, very much so, especially when you compare it to some of the, the more exploitative methods that were often associated with colonialism.
Right.
Franck, he envisioned a future where industrialization would benefit both the Belgians and the Congolese people.
Okay, so both sides would benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the key industries that he saw central to this future was palm oil.
Oh, palm oil. Okay.
Yeah, it was a valuable resource,
Yeah.
in high demand worldwide. And the Huileries du Congo Belge, or HCB for short, they became like a major player in this growing industry.
Okay. So what were they like?
Well, the book, it describes the HCB's model settlement at Alberta. It's like this thriving community built around palm oil production.
Okay.
They had modern facilities,
Yeah.
organized plantations, even comfortable housing for the workers.
Hmm.
So it's really like a glimpse into this vision of a more organized, efficient Congo.
It's interesting. The book talks about the process of, from planting those palm trees
Yeah.
to harvesting the fruit,
Right.
which, harvesting the fruit, it could be pretty dramatic.
Oh, yeah, from these towering palms, sometimes dangerous too.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that while palm oil was this valuable commodity, getting it wasn't without its challenges.
Right. And it wasn't just about the process either. Control of this resource was a key factor in global power dynamics.
That makes sense.
After World War I, the book notes how control of palm oil shifted from Germany to Britain. It's like a perfect example of how economic power can follow political upheaval.
Wow.
These resources like palm oil, they weren't just about trade. They were about leverage on the world stage.
Right. Yeah. Now, kind of shifting gears a little bit, we encounter a story that really showcases American ingenuity. And it's a very different approach to development in the Congo.
Okay.
The book, it takes us to this place called Chikapa.
Chikapa.
Yeah. It was an American settlement, and it was built around diamond mining in the Kasai region.
Okay. Interesting.
And it was described as like this model of efficiency, a real stark contrast to some of the chaotic development that we see in other parts of the Congo.
Yeah, Chikapa almost feels like this, like a frontier town. But with this American emphasis on organization
Right.
and infrastructure, even the diamond mining process there is described as surprisingly straightforward.
Oh, yeah.
You remove the top layer of earth, you dig up the gravel, you shake it out, and there you have it, diamonds.
Wow. So the alluvial mining process in the Kasai Basin, it was really attractive to these American entrepreneurs because it was so simple.
Yeah.
And it was this vast region, just teeming with potential for diamond production.
But what I thought was really interesting is how the Americans managed their workforce in Chikapa.
Okay.
So instead of the strict controls and the segregated compounds that you see in Kimberley, they encouraged the native workers to establish self-governing villages. It was a real departure from the norm, And you can really see that American pragmatism at play here.
Right.
They recognized that a contented workforce was a productive workforce.
Right.
So by allowing the Congolese people to maintain some degree of autonomy and cultural identity, they hope to reduce the risk of unrest and increase efficiency.
It sounds like they were learning from the mistakes that were made in other parts of Africa.
Yeah, exactly. It's a reminder that sometimes the most effective solutions are also the most humane.
That's a good point. And an African adventure, it doesn't just focus on the big picture.
Right.
It's filled with these anecdotes that really give you a glimpse into the everyday lives of the people who lived in the Congo.
Oh, yeah.
And there's one story that really stood out to me. It involves the naming of this this portly Belgian official.
Oh, okay.
The Congolese people, they had this great sense of humor.
Yeah.
And they dubbed him Mafuta Mingi, which means a lot of fat.
That's cool.
Yeah. And when the official, understandably a little offended, demanded a new title, they solemnly renamed him Kiboko, which means hippopotamus.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I know, right? It's funny, but it reveals the subtle ways that the Congolese people, they navigated the complexities of colonial rule.
Right.
They used humor
Yeah.
and language to kind of assert their own identity and poke fun at the people in power.
Absolutely. And there's another anecdote about a dispute over a bar of soap.
A bar of soap.
Yeah, in a native market. And the author, he describes this incredibly heated argument, dozens of people shouting and gesticulating wildly. And it turned out it was the wife of this boat worker. She'd either hidden or sold this piece of soap, and her husband was publicly berating her for it.
Oh, wow. Over a bar of soap.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even these seemingly trivial things could become sources of conflict and tension in this environment.
That's so interesting. These stories, they show us that the Congo wasn't just a backdrop for political maneuvering and resource extraction. It was this land, teeming with these human stories with its own complex social dynamics.
Yeah.
Cultural nuances.
Right.
Different ways of life.
Speaking of cultural nuances, the book also delves into the existence of secret societies.
Oh, right.
Like the terrifying society of the leopards.
Oh, wow. The Society of the Leopard.
Yeah. These societies had their own codes and rituals and a history that could be quite quite dark.
Yeah, the Society of the Leopard, they were known for their brutal methods. They'd wear these leopard skins and use gloves with these steel blades to strangle their victims.
Oh, wow.
So it looked like an animal attack.
That's creepy.
It is creepy. And these societies, they really underscore the enduring power of tradition and belief systems in the Congo. Even with, all this Western influence coming in, ancient customs and ways of life persisted.
Right.
Often in this uneasy tension with the modern world.
The author's encounters with these societies, they really highlight just how much we still don't understand about the Congo.
Right.
They challenge our assumptions and remind us that there's always more to learn, more to discover beneath the surface.
It's so true. But amidst all these complexities, we also encounter individuals who are drawn to the Congo for reasons beyond ambition or profit.
Oh, yeah.
The book introduces us to this American missionary couple who were living in the Kasai region. The husband was a Swede who had immigrated to America.
Okay.
And his wife was from Kansas.
Interesting.
And they had dedicated their lives to spread their faith, and they eventually settled in this really remote corner of the Congo.
That's wild. Their story really reminds us that the Congo, it attracted people from all walks of life with their own motivations, their own beliefs.
And it's fascinating how the book captures these little details, that reveal the complexities of this cultural exchange that was happening.
Right.
The author notes that the American wife, because she had lived with her Swedish husband for so long, she developed this Swedish accent. It's a small observation, but it speaks volumes about how cultures blend and adapt in these unexpected ways.
Yeah. As the author's journey continues, he finds himself really relying on the resourcefulness of the Fourminiere organization to navigate this really challenging terrain of the Kasai region.
Okay.
He'd planned to travel by automobile, but, mechanical failures forced him to resort to some more traditional methods.
So how is he traveling?
So picture this. He's traveling in a teepoi. It's a type of hammock-like litter carried by porters through dense jungles, battling the heat, the humidity,
Wow.
the ever-present threat of wild animals.
That sounds like a far cry from a modern-day safari.
Yeah, absolutely. It was an arduous journey that really demanded resilience and a willingness to adapt. And along the way, the author, he reflects on this quote by the famed explorer Stanley.
Oh, Stanley, yeah.
And Stanley once wrote, no luxury of civilization can be equal to the relief from the tyranny of custom.
The tyranny of custom. That's an interesting way to put it.
It is. And Stanley, he believed that the wilds of a great city were more oppressive than the wilds of Africa. That true freedom could be found by escaping the constraints of society.
It makes you wonder, could the Congo, with all its challenges and all its dangers, could it actually offer this unique kind of freedom?
Right.
A chance to escape that tyranny of custom that you find in more developed societies?
It's a question that really lingers. And, as the author finally reaches his destination, the American outpost at Chikapa, he hears the sound of an automobile engine in the distance.
Oh, wow.
And he feels this wave of relief.
Knowing that he's finally arrived.
Yeah.
It's a powerful image of human ingenuity and perseverance.
Absolutely. But it's also a reminder that the journey is never truly over, is it?
Right.
The Congo, with all its complexities and contradictions, it continues to evolve.
Right.
It challenges our understanding of the world. It must have been amazing to hear that engine.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Sign of civilization.
Right out there in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. But, arriving in Chikapa, it wasn't just the end of the journey. It was a chance to really look at how this American settlement was trying to carve out a place for itself in the heart of the Congo.
It really highlights that clash of cultures that was happening all across the Congo, You had this drive for industrial progress butting up against these ancient traditions and ways of life of the Congolese people.
And the way the Americans approached the whole issue of native labor, it really stands out.
Oh, yeah.
It seemed like they had learned some tough lessons.
Yeah. From places like Kimberley, where those strict controls and the segregation really just fueled resentment and unrest.
Instead of repeating those mistakes, the Americans in Chikapa, they actually encouraged workers to establish their own villages.
It's a different approach.
Yeah, and these weren't just, worker housing.
Right.
These were self-governing communities.
Yeah.
where people could, maintain their cultural practices, their own
Uh,
social structures.
It was a bold move.
Yeah.
It was a gamble, but it was one that recognized the humanity of the workers.
It seems like it paid off, too.
Yeah, it did. The workers felt this sense of ownership
Yeah,
and belonging,
right.
which led to greater productivity and loyalty.
It just shows that sometimes the most effective solutions are the ones that prioritize human dignity and respect.
Yeah. It's a lesson that resonates even today.
Absolutely.
Especially as we grapple with these issues of globalization and
Yes.
cultural sensitivity.
Right. But we can't, we can't end this deep dive without acknowledging the dark side of the story.
Yeah.
While some individuals like Louis Fonck genuinely aim to improve the lives of the Congolese people,
Yeah.
the reality of colonialism, it was often brutal and exploitative.
It was the pursuit of resources, whether it was diamonds, rubber, or palm oil, it often came at a terrible human cost.
It did. Forced labor, displacement, disease.
Yeah.
These were the all too common consequences.
And an African adventure, it doesn't shy away from those hard truths.
No.
It presents this nuanced picture where ambition and greed are really woven into the fabric of the whole story.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that progress often comes with a price, and it's important to recognize that human cost.
This book, it really challenges us to confront the legacy of the past
Yeah.
and to understand how these historical forces continue to shape the present.
Right.
South Africa and the Congo, these regions we've been exploring, they're not just places on a map.
Right.
They're living testaments to the enduring impact of history.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this thought. Remember that moment when the author finally reaches Chikapa?
Mm-hmm.
That sound of the automobile engine in the distance?
Yeah.
It's a symbol of human ingenuity.
Right.
Our ability to overcome obstacles and persevere,
Yeah.
even in the most challenging environments.
Absolutely. But it's also a reminder that the journey never really ends.
Yeah.
The Congo, with all its complexities and its contradictions,
Right.
it continues to evolve. And it's up to each of us to keep learning, keep exploring, and to use our understanding of the past to shape a better future.
Maybe, as Stanley suggested, stepping into the unknown, venturing into the heart of a continent, can offer this unique kind of freedom. Perhaps it's a chance to break free from those old ways of thinking, to see the world with fresh eyes, and to discover new perspectives on ourselves and the world around us. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into South Africa and the Congo.